It was a horrific, traumatic way of leaving my body and feeling as if, oh my goodness, I love my life. I don't want to have this happen. And being very conscious in that moment of leaving, that was what I felt.
Welcome back to Enthusiastically Spiritual. I'm your host, Teresa. If you haven't noticed, especially with this podcast, the path of spirituality has so many layers of uniqueness. Then add in all the amazing souls on the planet right now that are sharing their gifts and support in assisting all of us through this time frame. My guest today is one of them, and she is here to shed some light on bridging the seen and unseen realms and building trust in how to discern the most optimal path for you and where you are on your journey. Her name is Joyce Anastasia. She is a transformational leadership consultant, a peace ambassador of social healing, and a top trusted intuitive advisor. With advanced degrees in training and extensive hands-on experience in psychology, consciousness, PSI research, creativity and innovative business processes, governance, global ways of leading, healing, being in the world, Joyce evokes the best in people, encouraging power with collaborations, emotional intelligence, and ethically responsible decision makings from the personal to the global. As a confidant, bridging the seen and unseen realms, she builds relational trust with a customized blend of critical thinking and intuitive insights, together discerning the most optimal pathways for the greatest outcome. As author of the book, Extraordinary Leadership During Extraordinary Times, and founder of Lead by Wisdom, Joyce specifically inspires entrepreneurs, conscious international leaders, and ordinary individuals to identify their greatest visions, insights, and divine gifts. Also to learn the most effective tools to navigate current challenges and to embrace courageous visions with their ethical implementation and to leverage their most significant heart-based manifestation and positive impact in the world. Welcome, Joyce.
Thank you so much, Teresa. I am really honored to be on your show.
Well, I am honored because, boy, that's a really great intro, and you have done a lot of amazing work this lifetime.
I feel sometimes like I've lived, like 9 lives, maybe.
Like those cats they talk about all the time.
That's right. That's right. And I'm very grateful. I'm very grateful to be alive during this wild and crazy time that we're living in.
I know exactly what you're talking about. And I would love if you would first share how you found that inner enthusiasm for bringing you to where you're at right now in your life, Joyce.
Well, wow, it could go in a lot of different directions. But what I want to first say is that from a very young age, I was gifted with understanding a connection with Source, whatever that means to people. For me, I grew up Roman Catholic, but my spiritual connection has shifted in many ways, many different methods to come to the same end, which is we are born from the same origins. And so when you hear expressions like namaste, it is an expression of, I see a part of you in me and a part of me in you. And may it be well. May it all be well. So at a very young age, to have that in the midst of 4 siblings, parents who didn't have a lot of money, economic challenges, dad going to work in 3 jobs, mom being the consummate homemaker and loving mother and loving wife. It felt like a weird solo journey, yet at the same time, really supported by everything around me, not only in the seen realm when people couldn't be available, but in the unseen realms. So I would have dreams, I would have intuitive impressions and precognitive ideas that they may have been diminished. And I was told, you know, I was crazy and all sorts of other things, to when things would happen, it would be very challenging to move through. So with all of those experiences and support, I have just been guided every single day. And the more that I was guided to serve humanity and serve people in our world and to treat our beautiful earth with great reverence, the more that I continued down that path. So it was like creating one brick of the yellow brick road at a time as I experienced it. Where do I go now? Great Spirit, God Source.
Especially in these times right now that we're in, because they are very chaotic, very challenging, but also amazingly expansive. And like I'm in the intro, when I mentioned that, you know, there's amazing souls on the planet like you right now who are here to embrace your gifts and share them with the masses that need the support.
And you too, you and your beautiful show, I'm sure have inspired many, many people in our world, when it's very easy for people to become hopeless. You inspire a hopeful expression of taking things in. And, you know, just in any one of your interviews, I could pull out the arenas that relate to gratitude, to have gratitude in our life. What does that do to us? It changes our dynamic. It changes how we treat one another. And what about forgiveness? Forgiveness of others. But most importantly, for many people, it's about forgiving oneself, which is about the hardest thing to do, especially now. And keeping an even keel, balancing life path with career and family and children and stress and illness or non-illness and immune strong, etc. So all of those things are so critical right now, and people forget we have them and they don't cost anything to do.
That's the secret, right? They don't cost anything.
Yeah.
That's a big deal, because a lot of people spend a lot of money on, well, pharmaceuticals and medications and things that they think, or also escape things like, you know, alcohol and drugs and different things also to subside or try to calm down whatever's going on inside of them, where they really need to work on and can grab a hold of that beautiful divine being inside, like you said, that, you know, that we're really all one, and learn how to work with that and heal. And that's what I try to instill in this, and all the people that come on like you, and you know, and just the bigger picture for a soul's journey and how to really grab a hold of that. And especially in the times right now, because again, even though it's chaotic and some people are having a lot of difficulties, which a lot of people are, my gosh, it's like we all chose to be here right now. All, what, 8 billion of us on the planet or plus. And there's a reason why there's so many people here right now.
Yes. Yes. And it makes me think of Albert Einstein quote that says, there are two ways to live. One is as though nothing is a miracle. The other is as though everything is a miracle. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't mean that we spiritually bypass things. Mm-hmm. Like a lot of people who I work with get very frustrated with certain groups that say oh, don't worry, be happy. Okay, that's a big phrase out there. There is some truth to that. Don't worry, be happy, right? But to get there, what needs to be done is so important not to ignore.
Mhm.
So, like, I might encourage people, well, what is your intention? What would you like to see different in the world, or in your company, or in your family, or in your life path, right? And when they can identify what it is that their intention is, then things start to move just a little bit. And then when they look at what's blocking that intention, then that's another step. Then another step might be, there are people who have a tough time with, let's just say, someone is having trouble in their community circles, and a person is taking too much space, taking too much energy, always having problems. And someone who comes to me might feel completely drained, have no capacity to give anymore, and also has a really tough time setting boundaries, right? So then it becomes, oh, why is it hard for you to speak your truth to someone? And if you do, what's the worst thing that can happen?
Like they don't resonate with it, move on.
Or, maybe it's because that's the way they were taught. Maybe it triggers a core wound of um, feeling like I cannot speak my truth. Otherwise, I might get yelled at as a kid, or lose my job as an adult, or lose friends, or lose a family circle. Well, there are ways to navigate through that, and to figure out different ways that are, I want to say graceful, but that's a little bit too feminine because not all men relate to that word graceful. But to be able to speak truth about some event that's going on, or a situation that's going on, without bludgeoning or powering over someone else. And when that can happen, and there are many ways that that could be done, then something really magical happens. There's a different energy in the relational space. There's an honoring of each person rather than being in battle with or against someone, or I'm better than, or I'm right, or you're wrong. No, it becomes, how can we move forward so that what is happening shifts? I don't feel overwhelmed with having to take in all the time, or give all the time, or do all the work all the time, while the other person gets to express, I really need help. Well, maybe we could get others to help you. And maybe there are resources within oneself to seek the help or the answers.
That unseen part of us, that spiritual divine being. And I'd like to kind of go into that a little bit, because I know for yourself, you've had some experiences through your life, like you've had 3 near-death experiences. I'd
Yes.
love for you to share a little bit about that and how that helped shift your spirituality and honoring and actually understanding more about the unseen part of us.
I appreciate that question. And I did not actually know or remember about my two earlier near-death experiences until I experienced my third one. So I'll just tell you a little bit backward. So I'll tell you what I came to remember from my first two first. So when I was in my mother's womb, she's small like me. I know your listeners are hearing and not necessarily seeing, but I'm about 5 foot, maybe 95 pounds. My mom was the same way when she was pregnant with me. And the doctors at the time gave her gas to knock her out enough so that she could have birth without damaging her body or being in excessive pain. Well, they gave her so much for that small size that she began to vomit. And in that, I experienced vomit within the womb and almost suffocated to death. And the doctors had to remove me with forceps so that they could get me to breathe properly. And while I left my body in the womb, I was greeted by angels and said basically, "Oh, wait a minute, you're not supposed to be here right now." As welcomed as I felt. And they said, though, that because of the timing, I could choose to stay with them or go back into my mother's womb. And I basically said, "Are you kidding me? It took me so long to pick these parents. I am definitely going back into my mother's womb." So, I mean, there's great humor to that, but there's also so much richness about what that meant for me, a comprehension of the lives in between, the spaces in between, and how we're supported and how we're given free will to stay or go sometimes. So that was the first one. The second one was around 7 or 8 years old. And I was with my family on vacation. Even though my parents didn't have a lot of money, one of the things my father insisted upon was that we take 5 to 7 days each year to be with each other as a family, no matter where we ended up going. Well, this particular year, we went to the beach. At the time also, there was no worry about letting your children wander off as far as they wanted to, because they would always come back. And there was this foundation of feeling safe on vacation at the beach. And so I went off. I was a good swimmer, so they knew that I would be fine. And I was just curious and swimming, and there was a riptide. Of course, I didn't know what a riptide was at the time. I got caught in the wave, in the pull of the wave so strongly that it flipped me upside down and I hit my head on a rock. And I was bleeding and probably just went unconscious. But I just left my body at the time. Of course, I wasn't at the time conscious of all this. It was only afterward that I was conscious of it. And once again, I was greeted by angels and energy of my relatives, which I didn't know where I was. I was surprised. "Oh, Aunt Bina, wow, hi. What are you doing here?" And this type of thing was going on. And basically, once again, I was told, actually, this time I was told, "This is not your time. you need to go back. And there's a reason for all of this. And I was given the reason, but when I was made conscious, I did not remember what the reasons were. But I rolled up onto the shore. People called a lifeguard. Lifeguard came over. He resuscitated me and took all my vitals, and I was perfectly fine. Nothing was wrong, even though all those things had truly happened. And I went back to find my family, and everything was fine. Where the change happened for that was several months later. And I, at the time, had dyslexia, had a really tough time learning in school. And so I certainly wasn't expecting that event to have any impact on anything except that, wow, I was greeted by angels, and I felt beautifully loved and cared for, and that there are beings on the other side, whatever that means, that are there to watch over us and tend to us and receive requests. So several months later, I discovered that I no longer had dyslexia. And how that happened was a cousin of mine brought over a book for my father on Edgar Cayce. Edgar Cayce, I had no idea who this was, but as she was describing, I was getting, to use the quote of your blog, enthusiastic, really enthusiastic about life itself in listening to what she had to say. My dad was not a reader. Not that he could care less about the subject. He was very intrigued, but he was not a reader of books. He was a reader of newspapers and magazines. And I just had in my head and my heart, I needed to read this book. But I didn't know, because at school, I could only read a first grade reader, and I was in third grade. And there was no way that I could read that book in my mind's eye. Well, as soon as she turned the book over and I saw Edgar Cayce's face, this surge went through my body and said, you have to read this book. You have to. And so I snuck it off the table and read it in 3 nights with a flashlight in my bed and the covers over my head. And 2 things happened from that. 1, I could not believe I could read. And number 2, Edgar Cayce's life reflected a lot of the life that I led, the life that I experienced as an intuitive at a very young age. And it just made me cry. So happy to meet a kindred soul. Third near-death experience was many, many years later. And this one was based upon actions that I had took that were unexpectedly, unknowingly unethical. This is really important. So I had gotten divorced. My dad got ill with cancer. I moved from Florida to New York to help my parents with my dad's going through whatever he needed to go through with his cancer. And when he would go into remission, I would look for a new position as a professor. And all that happened. He went into remission. I healed from my grieving of divorce, and my job had dissolved. And so I was rebuilding my life. And I was still in fear of, am I going to be able to survive? Am I going to be able to provide for myself by myself? And so I took the first job that was available. And when I arrived at that job, it paid about a third of what I had been making. It was the lowest paying college in the nation. And at the same time, it was in a beautiful space and place. And my boss kept asking to date me, and I did not want to date him. And finally, after about a year of being asked, I finally said yes. That's the unethical part. Unknowing unethical part was I really didn't want to date him, but I was afraid to say no for fear of losing my job, for fear of losing whatever support I felt like I had there. Fast forward, after dating him, I knew that it wasn't right. And several months later said, I can't do this anymore. And a series of events happened. The details don't matter, but in this one place, in response to my not wanting to date him anymore, he began to strangle me and strangled me to the point where I passed out. As I was losing consciousness, he whispered in my ear, I could drag you into the desert after taking you in this way and tell no one, and no one would ever find you. And that's what I went out of my body on in that near-death experience. I was dying. I was passing out from his damaging my larynx and my throat. And this time, the experience was far, far different, Teresa, far, far different. It was a horrific, traumatic way of leaving my body and feeling as if, oh my goodness, I love my life. I don't want to have this happen. And being very conscious in that moment of leaving, that was what I felt. And immediately I was in a sort of tunnel. It was, I would say, more like a portal, a gateway with this kind of ripply energy field that I was being called to enter into, and that I would be supported in entering into. And I felt the call of all of those spirit guides that had helped me all of my life to that point. And once again, all of my ancestors who had passed. And many, many, many different things happened in that space of being shown by master teachers why we're here in the first place, why our universe was even formed, why we choose to be human, why all the whys and wherefores that we ask as human beings on this planet. And also, though, most significantly, I was shown a book of my life and asked to review all the ways in which I had been so loving and beautiful to and for people, and how that impacted those people. Kind of like It's a Wonderful Life, that movie, It's a Wonderful Life, that we see repeatedly on during the holiday season, about look at the impact of what has happened just by your one single, unique, amazing life. And then when that was over, and I think they did this on purpose, and I say they, the spirit guides and source, instead of showing me all the ways that I had done things that were harmful, because I needed to see that my life was so beautifully valuable in so many ways. So then they asked me if I was willing to look at all the ways in which I had caused harm, knowingly or unknowingly. And there were many things that came up. But one of the things that stuck out most significantly was my choice to date this man, knowing that I had not, in my heart and being, known that I shouldn't, known that it was unhealthy to make that unethical to myself choice. And then it brought me to past lives and many, many past lives of how he and I might have been together, and how many others, both positive and negative past lives of what I've learned in this lifetime, and how others learn in this lifetime occurred. For him, with him, it was, I was told, not karmic, meaning I owed him something or he owed me something. It happened that we came across each other again. But I will say this, in the past life review, I had been an executioner of him in another lifetime. Again, unknowingly, I had a mask over my head. I didn't see his eyes. But again, that was an unethical choice to take someone's life and even choose the career of taking someone's life. So that was a long description of the unfolding of that, but that's the near-death experience.
So when you had the third one, then you recalled the other two?
That's correct. In detail. And I remember they did happen, and I felt like it was important to verify them. I'm also a research scientist, so I have this researcher niggling always coming up about, again, a bridging from the unseen realm to this realm. How do you verify some of these things? And many of them you can't. Many of them are just subjective, but when people do experience them, and you can evoke it without having a near-death experience. Like, this is what I try to do with my clients, people I work with, is how can I evoke a near-death experience for you so that you gain all the benefits, but not the horrors of it? Like, who wants to experience being strangled? No, that's not. It's like a 2x4 from the spirit realm.
Right.
Don't need that.
And so what are some of the benefits of evoking that? Is it just like getting that bigger picture, or really feeling like you have more hope? Or what do you find out with your clients when you take them there? What's the benefit?
Oh, I could give you a list of a million things, literally, Teresa. So I'm gonna throw it back at you for a moment and toss the baton to you. What do you think if you experienced a near-death experience so that you could be shown ways that you have gifted the world and ways that you might have accidentally harmed people in your world, including yourself? What would you pick? What would be the gift from that for you?
Well, the first word that pops into my mind is more compassion for myself as well as those around me.
Yes.
And I love what you said about past lives, because I know some of my past lives, and I know that I've done some bad things in past lives. And, it's just a piece of my soul's existence of going through eons of time and having positive experiences, not so positive experience, but where I'm at right now is really all that matters, the now.
Yes. And what you could do from the now is take the learning from the past lives, carry it into the now so that experiences that you have now that might be related to those past lives can be healed.
Mhm.
And the same with the future. So I see the now as this gorgeous intersection, like a Mobius strip that dances around itself in the eternal infinity sign that twists and turns in this dance to bring intuitive, like foreseeing or foreknowing, like if I were to do this, what would it be like in the future? Into this present now to help make decisions. This is what, for me, encouraging intuitive learning, or that balance between concrete and intuitive learning, can help related to manifestation. Some people who are extreme with intuition need to learn how to be more concrete, need to learn how to logically carry in all those intuitively rich experiences and thoughts so that they can manifest on this planet, and why they're embodied in this vessel, in the human vessel, it brings forward. So the near-death experience, I could have had a choice to leave and be embodied in some other way, some spirit form floating around. I could have done that and been in perpetual bliss, let's say. But that is not my life path right now. My soul's path, my long-term soul's path. So I'll ask CEOs, what do you think is your current life path or reason for doing what you're doing? Have the choices that you've made been ethical? Is why you are experiencing the illnesses that you are experiencing from suppression of your own truth? Or are you finding that your team hates you? And I use that term actually lightly, because hating is a really strong, powerful word, right?
Yeah.
But there are employees that that literally, quote unquote, hate their bosses. Why? Because they felt powered over. They felt oppressed. There's a reason why the oppressor is doing that. And it may be because of their past life experiences. Maybe they were bullied in a past life. Maybe they were powered over. Maybe they were killed or murdered, and why they're doing what they're doing. And when those people can be forgiven for the choices they make, then they might have an opening, just a slight opening in their heart space to take in that. Maybe I could do this in a different way. Do I always want to be hated by my employees?
Mhm.
Is it possible to hold both loving respect for people's gifts on teams and to reach manifested expression of what a company needs to survive on this earth plane? I believe yes, 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 and yes.
I like that, Joyce. I'm a yes girl. You're a yes girl. Take it yes. Well, as you're saying that, I'm like, oh my gosh, you could take this to like everything, like politics and you name it. I mean, there are people that hate people and people that love people, and really it's on both spectrums. And it's like, gosh, I've said that to my husband. I talk about this all the time about different scenarios on the planet right now, and I'm like, that person have had to have done something really horrific that people just can't get over.
Yes.
And so, and I have chills, I say this, Joyce. And so it's, forgiving that person, forgiving the situation. But of course, unless you're diving into this unseen aspect of ourselves and our intuition, a lot of people, depending upon where they're at in their level of consciousness, are not going to go there to that depth of healing and that depth of understanding versus I just hate this person to the extreme.
Yeah.
So what do we do, Joyce?
Well, I will share something with you that I did in a workshop.
Mhm.
And it was a workshop that encouraged people to look at something they hated in themselves and to forgive themselves for it. Then I asked them to reflect on a politician they hate and then ask them to forgive them without telling them beforehand. It was really incredible what happened. And another way to sit with this and be able to bring it present and really alive, really truly encourage people to do this is to start out by saying, what if your 5-year-old self were to meet a politician's 5-year-old self and actually go through the scenario of whatever would happen? And it typically would be they're playing with each other, right? Or maybe fighting over a toy, right? Or something of that nature. But it would be real. It would become visceral because they'd be envisioning it in their mind's eye. And then I take them to their adult selves after they forgive their children's selves. And then it's easier. And then it's amazing.
I love that so much. So yeah, Joyce, we need to get this out to every single person on the planet. I know you already feel that, right? It's like
absolutely
global. Hello. Oh,
yes, exactly.
What a time we live in. And of course, we chose again, go back to the beginning. We chose to be here now for this healing, because this is not only the healing of right now, like we're talking about, it's the healing of the past. It's the healing of the future. And it's beautiful. It's as challenging and as chaotic and as, hatred filled oftentimes it is. It's an amazing time to be alive.
It is. And people find the threads. They do. And sometimes it hits them by surprise, and that's fun too. Like
that 2x4, like,
yeah, and 2x4, but also being open to the mystery. Like someone could be just gotten over a heated fight with someone, like maybe even their best friend or their colleague, and they're walking down the street and suddenly they see a cat snuggling up to a dog or natural enemies of let's just use the animal world kingdom right now. Suddenly we see two enemies, typical, natural, instinctive enemies kissing each other. I've seen it happen. I kid you not, I've seen it happen. And that is miraculous.
I'll say amen, aho, hells yes, all the above. All the above, Joyce. Oh, well, this has been such a fun talk today. And I want you to share a little bit with my listeners of how you work with people and how they can connect with you.
Well, I also want to offer to you and your audience 50% off for an individual session. That for me is always the best way to start, because I want to get to know the people before I get to know their teams, if they're on a team, or a family, if they want me to work with their family. So they could call me at 415-322-9442, or through my website. They could go directly to my website, www.leadbywisdom.com, or they could write to me via email, which is also on my website, Joyce Anastasia at gmail.com. I like to keep it personal and simple. And a caveat I have for for your audience is when you come to me, I vet whether it's a good match. So if, and you should do the same thing. Am I a good match for you? That way, when you come to me, you can be assured, absolutely assured. If I say yes, then I am in a place of, I trust that this is going to be extremely beneficial for you. And I do it in a customized way. No matter how many people I work with, you are unique. We are all unique beings. And so when you come to me, it's extremely professionally confidential. No one will hear from me anything from our session unless you wish to share it with others. And that is welcome too. And also that, please, if you are going to do so, I want you to know that you can trust to tell me things, and I am going to be of no judgment, no shame, no blame.
Mm-hmm.
So you can share genuinely, truthfully with me. If you don't, I will eventually sense it, and we will have a chat about that. Not that I see everything and I can't see your future. That's not what this is about. I could see pathways to your future.
Beautiful, Joyce. Well, I thank you so much for coming on today, and I will have all that information in the show notes. So any of the listeners and watchers on YouTube that are interested in, and checking you out and offering a beautiful session with you to definitely connect with the show links, because they'll all be in there.
Excellent.
But thank you so much again, Joyce. Wow, what a mission you're on. I honor it. And you've been a great, great, great fit for this podcast, Enthusiastically Spiritual. So I'm just so thankful that you came on today. Thank you so much, Joyce.
I am so grateful for your intuition to connect with me.
Well, listeners, I hope you enjoyed that powerful episode today with Joyce. She came on and boy, sharing her near-death experiences and all the beautiful, amazing ways that she is of support and showing up in the world. And I honor her journey so much. And I honor each and every one of you for listening in to another episode of Enthusiastically Spiritual. I appreciate it. And please make sure that if you've not subscribed, that you do subscribe. Also, if you would like to make sure you like this episode, and also leave a comment and let me know what you got out of this episode and what gems you take away for your own journey for today. And until next week, just remember that life is too short to not be enthusiastic about your unique journey.